History is a part of the music that accompanies our lives. And we are rich indeed to have a heritage such as ours. Look back to that flamboyant era of adventure and excitement when lumber was the emperor of all resources. The lumberjack era in Saskatchewan, Canada. Life as a lumberjack has been remembered. Otis Cartier lived and loved that space and time. And we are indebted to him for keeping those wonderful memories alive of a precious age gone by. What was it really like? Otis, born in 1889, recollects those days with a memory as sharp as the blades that cut the trees.
When we first come here, it was so fresh, you know, everything was fresh. There was nothing, nobody had ever been around here. It was just a new country. And there was lots of water and lots of bush. It was pretty near all bush on this place anyway. First, I didn't care for the place, but after a while, I don't know, I got fooling around the bush and cutting wood, and I got to like it.
What brought Otis and thousands like him to this new, unbroken land? The rich forest lands of Saskatchewan had been part of the Hudson's Bay Territory until purchased by the Government of Canada in 1870. Now, in 1872, the first Dominion Lands Act provided for the designation of special timber districts and forest reserves, and in 1876, the first lumber mill in Prince Albert commenced operations. With this new industry came the loggers and logging camps. The Cartier family came from famous stock.
The way my uncle told me, he wrote for the family tree, you know, and they said, yes, that we were descended from Jack Cartier. And George, well, that's my dad, he met my mother, yeah, in Quebec someplace, in Trois-Rivières, Quebec. They got married. And then they come out to North Dakota. And he started farming there, and that's where I was born.
Shortly after Saskatchewan became a province in 1905, the Cartiers were on the move north.
Well, in 1906, the old man left North Dakota. He come out and homesteaded in the fall of 1906. This part of the country was just getting opened up then. He heard about it, and he says, I'm going down to take up a homestead for $10. He thought that was cheap, so did I at that time. But anyway, he come out in the fall. There was lots of schools in Prince Albert, Catholic school and all that. And I got a job on the survey. I was only 16, but I went to work. I could handle an axe. I got a job on the survey, and I worked a month for that surveyor, a man by the name of Cote, an old-timer. We surveyed all south of town there, town lots. And then we went to Rostron and surveyed there for a couple of weeks. And my month was up and I quit. I was only getting $35 a month, you know. From there I went to the Prince Albert Lumber Company, and I worked with them for 14 years. I stayed right there till I come out here on the farm. I'd never worked in a mill before, you know, but I was kind of strange. There was a line up there, a different guy, you know. And the foreman come along and size us up and look us over a little bit, and he come to me and he said, what, are you up here looking around or just looking for a job? I said, I want to go to work. I want a job if you got one. He said, did you ever work in a mill? I said, no, this is my first year. Well, he says, I guess we can find a place for you, you know. The company didn't fire a man unless it was no good at all. he did try and put him someplace where he could fit. So he took me in. But before that, when we first come here, there was 3 mills in Prince Albert. I used to go work at the mill in the summertime, and then I quit the mill and went on the river drive. We'd drive there all summer, and it'll freeze up. After the drive was all in, we'd quit and go to town to spend our stake, and then we'd go to the lumber camp, logging camp. We'd stay there all winter.
Any lumberjack, like Otis, had a hard, rugged life.
No, I was thrashing in the fall of the year, late. It was colder than the devil, you know. And we were just finishing up at the old man's down here, and the key in the cylinder pulley was getting loose. So I went down there, and I noticed that, and I took a hammer to hit that key. And I was hanging on a brace with this hand, and I hit the darn key with the other hand, and there it is. Got me. It just about knocked me down, you know. God, it hurt. I held my hand like that to my eye, and the pain left, and then I looked at my mitt, and my eye was down there.
Accidents happened. But, like Otis, it was just one more experience in life. And for a lumberjack, life went on just the same. Now, that was 1910, when a lumberjack's wages for the winter months were only $35 a month, plus board. A large logging camp would consist of 175 men, or later on 200 men. There was a cook, a blacksmith, a foreman, and the camp crew. For 200 men, they had 4 bunkhouses, a dining room, kitchen, an office, blacksmith's shop, and a big barn large enough to accommodate 72 horses. The bunks were double-deckers, and in the early days, the men were supplied with only blankets and hay. In those days, white and black spruce and jack pine trees were cut down to a diameter of 10 inches breast high, or any tree that would make 2 logs 16 feet long. The saw gang consisted of 6 men, an undercutter who notched the trees so they would fall properly, 2 men to saw the trees down, 1 man to cut the limbs off, and 2 swampers to cut roads and pile the brush out of the way.
The first time I went to the lumber camp, we started cutting roads for the hall, for the log hall. We had to cut roads about 20 feet wide. Cut all the trees out and cut the trees right down in the roots so that they could run a rutter through that road. Make a rut about 6 inches deep. I think they were 6 or 8 feet apart. And then a tank man would come along with water, and he'd water that. And it would freeze overnight, you know, solid. And then the road was ready to haul. On a sharp turn sometimes, even with the ruts, the horse got excited going down on the run, downhill, you know. There was a sandman there with a pail of sand on a jigger, riding on a jigger. That's a little sleigh that they tied in front of the load. They don't ride on top of the load, right in the bottom. And the sandman was there with a pail of sand, and going down a hill, he'd throw sand in the rut, you know, to hold the sleigh back. But some of the hills were that steep, and the sandman got excited or something. The sleigh would go so darn fast, the horse couldn't hold it, and instead of making the turn, it'd go straight in the bush. Sometimes I see a fella get both legs cut off there one winter. A sleigh run over him. But they were big loads. They were 18 feet wide and from 10 to 26 feet long. They'd haul these loads down to the landing, and then a cat would come along. They call it a caterpillar. It was just like a cat with chains on it, and 2 little runners in front, and there was a man sitting on the hood steering that, hold it in the center, you know. They'd haul them on the leg. They'd pull 10 or 12 loads at a time, one behind the other, you know, and dump on the lake. And when the spring thaw come, well, they were ready to drive down here to the mill. And the river would take them down here. That's where I spend most of my time, on the rivers.
The logs were all taken down the Little Red River, which empties into the Saskatchewan River behind an island opposite the mill. However, Once the logs reached the Saskatchewan River, they had to be towed upstream by steamboat and around to the south side in order to reach the pond at the mill site. Now, in order to move the logs down the Little Red River, they had dams so the water flow could be flattened out and sluiced steadily. The river would be lined up with men, as many as 250 men, in small crews so they could watch every bend in the river. The logs had to be kept going 24 hours a day if at all possible. Foreman Allen Kennedy said in his recollections, "We always thought we could run 1,000,000 feet of logs a day, so with possibly 20, 25 million feet, the drive would take 20, 25 days. During that time, the Little Red River was full of logs for about 45 miles. This would represent about half the capacity of the mill, and the balance of the logs were driven down from Sturgeon Lake through the Shell River to the Saskatchewan River at a point about 5 miles above the bridge at Prince Albert."
We put in about 12 hours a day, and we got $2.50 to $3 a day for that. And board, good board though. The board were real good. And 5 meals a day. We take our lunch out. We had breakfast in camp, and then we'd take enough for three lunches along the river, and we'd come back home for supper. It was, just before dark sometimes, supper in the camp. So the cook had all day to do his cooking, and he had 2 cookies in there, helping to put the stuff on the table. They used to put the whole stuff on the table there at one end of a table, and we'd pick out what we wanted for our lunch. Toast bread, and bacon, hard-boiled eggs, lots of bacon, all kinds of bacon. Cakes and pies and anything you wanted. They had 100% grub there for working men.
The men may have worn different hats and different coats. The lumberjacks were individuals, but the work called for special clothing that every lumberjack wore.
We had to wear cork boots, with corks in the soles, steel corks, so we wouldn't slip off the logs. 2 pair of socks and a hat and a pair of overalls and sometimes another pair underneath. Stanfield underwear, that's what we used to buy all the time. We used to get them for $3.50 a suit them days. And we had 2 suits. Every 2 weeks, we'd wash them. Now, when we'd come in from the camp, every guy bought a brand new shoe, went to the tailor shop and either got it made or bought one already made. They used to be around $60 them days for a good suit. They always got the best, And that's where a suit just lasted them about 2 or 3 weeks in town. And after that, that was the end of it. It went on the drive. To wear a woolen, we call them windbreakers. Mackinaw shirts, that's what we call them. They were heavy wool, and they were long, but we doubled the bottom up and put bachelor buttons all around the waist here, about 6 bachelor buttons. You know what a bachelor button is? It's a button, you used to buy them at any place in the store. It's 2 peats to it, and you squeeze them together, and they clamp, and they stay put. They don't come off. They're good. They were good buttons. And that's what we used to wear. They were either red or blue with checks, and we wore that all winter in the camps. And on the river, we used to carry it with us. We didn't need it all the time. It was warm then. Oh, it used to last us 6 months anyway or more. We used to wear gold seal rubbers for $3 a pair. But gold seal rubber didn't freeze. They were soft all the time. It was pure rubber of some kind. I don't know what it was. Of course, we didn't work hard there, If there was no jam, if they had lots of water, we didn't have much to do as long as we kept the logs, watched the logs so they didn't stop. But when the water got low, that's where we had to work harder, because it didn't take much to form a jam when the river was getting narrower, as it went down. And we had to work sometime for a couple of hours till we got that jam going again. It would pile up. You could see it was going uphill as the water collected behind the jam. The jam would hold 10 or 12 feet of water, if it was long enough. But once we got it loosened from the bottom and the logs start moving, she'd go like a train, See how logs bump. Little logs, that big, it would break them right in two if they happened to get in the road. It'd go to beat the devil, especially where there were lots of current. Down below here it was twist. That's where a fellow got drowned there one day. Fell in the log and he never got out. His name was Demery. His dog found him after he was drowned. From the lake down to the main drive, the tail of the jam, the river was full of logs way up here about 6 miles north of here, up to Spruce Home. That was solid logs right down to the mill, to the mouth of the Red River. And after that, the drive was over, except the breakback crew. They kept a bunch of men at a camp down there, and we had to break them logs in as they sawed them, you see. It wasn't the only driving the logs. When they got real bad, you know, the men was scattered pretty bad. We used dynamite and shove them under the front end of the jam and blow the darn thing up. Some of them used to put 3, 4 sticks. Sometimes they'd put half a dozen sticks. It blew the logs up sometimes. I guess they went up 100 feet. All at once, the jam was gone. It broke it right away, most of the time. They always had a man with a bag of dynamite on their shoulder. They'd walk along the river. They'd seen a bad tree. Sometimes the trees would fall in the river. The roots would wash out, you know, and fall. Well, they'd blow that and cut it in two with dynamite or blow the stumps right out. I remember one time down here, not very far, somebody had been throwing dynamite out. I guess they had a little fire there, and it was a nice little spot. And we come along there one forenoon, and we was going to have our lunch there. So Bill was looking after the fire, and he happened to set that fire right on a place where some guys had lost a few dynamite caps there. And the water was just getting to a boil, and all the time them damn dynamite caps started blowing off and blew the fire all to hell and the tea cans and everything. And Bill Trombley was right close there. It blew dust in his face, you know. It didn't hurt him any. But it kind of spoilt the lunch. It was pretty near dark when we got to the camp. By the time we got washed up and had supper, it was dark, real dark. In the wintertime, the days were awful short, you know. Well, after supper, we'd go back in the bunkhouse then, and the boys would just sit around, tell jokes, or play cards, or sing. Some good singers in there, you know, old-time songs. On Saturday night, some camps used to play poker. There was always a poker shark in there, and he'd get all the money away from them. Young fella used to come from the prairie out here to make a few dollars for the winter, and he'd take all their money away from them. I didn't like it. I didn't say nothing, none of my business, but it happened a lot of times. And sometimes they'd play poker till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. That was on Saturday night, because on Sunday we didn't work. And this Irishman, his name was Paddy Haley. He was a big Irishman. And he was the bull of the camp for poker. I don't know whether he cheated or not, but he got all the money anyway. And I used to sleep in the top bunk, you know, and he'd holler at me, "Come on down here, Slim, and take a hand in this poker game." I'd lay down and watch them play, you know, from the top of the bunk. But I never got into poker. I never played poker in my life. That's one thing I never did do. I done pretty near everything else. Especially on Saturday night. Put on a square dance, you know. They call them stag dance. There was no girls, just men. We'd just pick up a partner and hop around a while. Old Mickey Doyle had called off, and there was a couple of Swedes there that used to play the violin. And we passed the evenings off that way. Through the week, the lights were out at 9 o'clock. We didn't have much time after supper. But on Saturday, it was our Saturday night off, and we could stay up as late as we liked. A lot of them used to read. Some of them used to read every night. Stories, you know, they'd bring books with them. But I used to like them to sing them old songs, you know. There was some good singers there. There was an Irishman, a young fellow from Ireland. He squandered all his money playing poker, every cent of it. But he was a darn good little singer, just a young guy, about 20, or 18 or 20, you know. And he used to sing some Irish songs, you know, and darn, he could sing like a lark, that little devil. Yeah, there's one song, how did it go now, Ireland? Oh, I forget all them songs. I knew that one pretty well, but Old Man Camp, he was a minister, a preacher. He homesteaded back north of us here, northwest of here. We used to come to the camp every winter. And he talked to the boys. He was a nice old man. I used to like him. And but there's always some smart aleck in the camp, and they would do some dirty tricks. We had a big long cap, your fur cap, and he used to put right down over his ears. And right after he was in the camp, they took his cap and put about a cup of syrup in it. And they hung his cap back where he had it, upside down so the syrup would stay there. Next morning he got up, he never knew that, and he pulled his cap over his head, and went hooked up and away he went to the next camp. And when he got to the next camp, he couldn't take his cap off. The syrup had run down, and stuck it to his head so tight that he couldn't pull it off. By golly, he says, some of them boys must have played a trick on me or something.
But come springtime, after the river drive was finished, the camp broke up. Otis remembers it this way. After working 3 to 5 months with about 150 or 200 men and having fun doing it, the last day was more like a funeral than anything else. All the boys had to say was a sad goodbye and a handshake, or I hope to see you again next winter, or we might see you on the next river drive. We all went in different directions. Some went on their homestead, others went back east where their folks lived. The rest of us stayed in Prince Albert or went to Saskatoon and spent our winters earning until the river drive started out. But about 50% we never saw again. The lumberjacks of the North were a special breed of men. They were strong and brave, and the bond among them became solid as they shared the hardships and rugged existence of the forest. Ingenuity and a willingness of the heart helped surmount the early difficulties of harvesting the first timber, a commodity to become so valuable in the construction of new towns and railroads. Their song of camaraderie and toil will ever ring across the years, together with the crack of the axe, the echo of the saw, and the cry, timber! Otis and Yvonne Cartier brought 14 children into the world. 13 are still living and are married with families of their own as we put this story to the screen. And the Cartiers still live on the original homestead land at White Star near Prince Albert. Otis still operates his portable sawmill and still sells what he harvests from his land. He's a man of the forest and a prize among men. Truly, a giant of his time.